Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Paul Ricard for the second race of the weekend for the Formula 4 Spanish Championship. It is Ben Evans and Elliot Wood with you for this second race. Again, 18 minutes plus one lap around the 5.8 kilometre long Paul Ricard circuit. And race one, earlier on, it was claimed by Giorgio Carrara, who finished clear of Johnny Edgar and Franco Colapinto. But the grid for this race, Elliot, set by the fastest laps.
Yes, and single-seater debutant Johnny Edgar, who is a Red Bull Junior, as you can see at the front of the grid here, is starting on pole in only his second ever car race, ahead of Giorgio Carrara, our race one winner, Kilian Meyer, who started at the front in the first race but fell back quite significantly, and Shahab Al-Habsi, who was our championship leader prior to the weekend, but lost the lead in the last race to Fernando Alonso protege Franco Colapinto.
So here's our lineup then. Johnny Edgar from Giorgio Carrara, then Kilian Meyer, Shahab Al-Habsi, Artem Lobonenko in 7th, head of Glenn Van Berlo, Timothy van der Helm in 9th from Ghanam Rached, Axel Noos and Ivan Nosov on row 6th, Carlos Martinez and Emilio Pesce, then Rafael Villanueva, Belen Garcia, Nerea Marti and Irina Sidorkova to complete the grid. And the race earlier on was a really entertaining one. Lots of ebbs and flows and overtaking.
Yeah. Oddly, on the warm-up lap, Edgar stalled and he almost fell to the back, but because there were still some cars behind him, he was able to take his place near the front of the grid. And he ended up being in the lead at one point in the race, but the front four were constantly changing positions and fighting each other. And Carrara played his race very well, was quite conservative at the start, and he was getting faster and faster, and he ended up taking the win after Colapinto span.
Colapinto was just pushing too hard into turn 11 and the car broke away from him. But this time around, Johnny Edgar is starting on the fast side of the grid, and something that we've seen in all the races here this afternoon actually is that pole position side of the grid. Generally, they've been getting a lot better away, a lot better than the dirty side. Yeah,
in the Euro Formula Open race, we had the second place starter Yuki Tsunoda making a poor start, and he is, like Edgar, a Red Bull Junior. So Edgar's hopefully going to take the second Red Bull win of the day today, as stablemate Liam Lawson won the Euro Formula Open race.
Well, he will be hoping that. Everybody else will be, I'm sure, with different plans on the agenda. So by our maths, Franco Colapinto took the championship lead in the first race after Shahab Al-Habsi had all sorts of dramas. But for Al-Habsi, the fastest lap means setting the grid is actually very handy for him. It's propelled him up to the second row of the grid after a difficult qualifying, a difficult first race, and now he's got the chance to fight for the podium.
Yeah, and Al-Habsi was a title contender in the United Arab Emirates Championship earlier this year, and the fact that he'll start behind Colapinto will help him massively, as 6th on the grid is quite far back in these cars.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, isn't it, to fight your way through the field. But this Paul Ricard circuit is a track that you can overtake on as they head down the lengthy Mistral straight to the chicane that comes just about midway through, and weave around, getting a little bit of warmth into the tyres. And the Gens Motorsport teammates, Johnny Edgar and Giorgio Carrara, taking this formation lap out, you'd have to say actually quite a pace, because this one of the longest circuits they're going to race on, 5.8 kilometres. They don't want to hang about too much to get on with this, as we have a glimpse at Irina Sidorkova, who currently rounds out the field. And it's great to see in this championship a trophy for female drivers, and it has done the job in terms of attracting a healthy entry for that trophy.
Yeah, and in the second race of the season opening Navarra round, Belen Garcia, our leading female entrant, actually won the race overall.
Which is fantastic, although she had adventures along the way, shall we put it, in race one with a little bit of a spin. Rafael Villanueva, another driver, had adventures along the way, but they all appear to be there, which is quite good, which shows that the teams came well equipped this weekend. There's a few damaged and dinked corners to the cars. Fortunately, nothing much more substantial than that, as the Red Bull livery car, Johnny Edgar, leads them around. Then it is the light blue and dark blue car of Giorgio Carrara, Killian Mayer is in the bright orange car and Shihab Al-Habsi in the darker car. Franco Colapinto, who runs with the DriveX team, he is supported by Fernando Alonso, and therefore he is running in the colours of Fernando Alonso's junior racing efforts.
Yeah, so Alonso has his junior team in several series, and he's chosen one driver in Spanish F4 for the last 2 years to have his patronage, and Colapinto's been the lucky recipient. Argentinian also has the support of Pedro de la Rosa, another F1 driver of the past, and Esteban Guerrieri, who is one of Argentina's greatest junior single-seater drivers of all time.
So he really comes very, very highly regarded and backed, and certainly Guerrieri, without wishing to go down the Anorak rabbit hole, is one that got away in terms of a Formula One career. As Johnny Edgar, he has got that motorsport future in front of him, as do all the drivers on the grid as they roll into position. And that's interesting there, Elliot. Edgar just looking in his mirrors, he's clearly waiting to see where everybody else is.
Yeah, he'll hope to make the best start possible this time round after his first race error. But the fact that he's already looking behind maybe suggests he's quite nervous.
Well, we're about to find out as we look for the man with the flag back of the grid. Here he comes now. So it is eyes towards the gantry time as the revs begin to rise. Waiting for and away they go, and it is a good getaway from Edgar. It's a very, very good start from further back. I'm going to guess that's Glenn Van Berlo, who has rocketed away from the fourth row of the grid. As they head in towards turn one, though, it is Johnny Edgar who snatches a break but leads the way from Giorgio Carrara.
And Edgar's just taken the lead there, but he slid through the first two corners, and there's two drivers who have completely cut across the first two as well. Carrara's lining himself up behind Edgar, going down to turn 4.
As also Killian Maher. Oh, a huge accident behind. And that is a car that went airborne in a big, big way. And it would appear to be one of the DriveX entries. We will pick out who that is in a couple of moments' time. We don't want to point any fingers there. It would appear to be Ghanem Rached, who is the driver who's not come through the first sector. And I would be surprised if that does not give us a safety car. The car well up in the air as Johnny Edgar leads the way from Giorgio Carrara. Then it is Shihab Al-Habsi who is up into third as Carrera looking for a move.
Yeah, Carrara's taking the inside line at the chicane here, and he's gone wide. But Edgar's kept the lead going through, but there'll be a second chance as they're through the second part of the straight. And he'll be lining himself up for turn 10 now.
Just wondering as well if some of them have been caught out a little bit by the cold tires, and there is Ghanem Rached, appears to be moving around a little bit in the cockpit. Oh, and Carrara to the inside of Shihab Al-Habsi, and that is brave stuff. And Al-Habsi slowed. This might bring Nicolas Bayart into the mix as well as Franco Colapinto, as they slither their way through turn 11. And they've been at the circuit since very, very first things when they were qualifying, and there's a little bit of an end-of-day atmosphere to some of the early stages of this race.
Yeah, and it appears, in addition to Rached, Tijman van der Helm has been going very slowly at the back of the field. He actually cut the chicane, splitting the Minstrel Straight, so wondering if he's going to make it to the end of the lap.
Possibly a little bit of damage in the suspension department as Franco Colapinto to the inside of Shihab Al-Habsi. No sign yet of a safety car having been issued, but Colapinto having to really defend here as they come towards turn 1. And Al-Habsi now looks to pull out of the bubble.
Yes, and Edgar's already pulled out by 1 second, but it's interesting that Colapinto and Al-Habsi are title rivals, and Colapinto's already passed. Having started 2 places behind, he's already ahead of his title rival.
He certainly is, as Nicolas Bayart just in behind them as well. Yellow flag covering this section of track. The car of Ghanem Rached some way off the circuit, but it's not going to move under its own steam anytime soon. So hopefully that's not going to give us safety car interruption. Everybody else cleanly through, except, of course, Timothy van der Helm, who is into the pit lane. Now here is another look at the start, and lightning getaway from, I think it was Bayard.
Yeah, and Killian Maher from third place made a very poor start and lost several positions, it appears.
Yes, very good spot. And Edgar did what he needed to do. Giorgio Carrara doing what he needed, or trying to overhaul him, but it was then very busy in the midfield. Now, we don't see the start of this incident, but my goodness me, we see the end of it. And in many respects, that... Oh, here it is from another angle. Crikey! That car launched into the air, and very reminiscent of the accident Richie Stanaway had at Spa in 2012 in the Formula Renault 3.5 litre championship. As the car launched up, and actually, Elliot, I think we're very fortunate that that didn't become an awful lot worse.
Yeah, and we're back ahead. Edgar's already peeled out 0.6 seconds. It's only his second single-seater race, but he's doing well. It appears Al Habsi's got back past Colapinto, and this is all about title battle as well as over third place.
Giorgio Carrara's also had quite a good lap, looking at the timing screen, and sets the fast lap of the race, but only by a couple of tenths of a second. And now, and we've had another incident further back. And we will, and I think it's Ivan Noza. Now there, I'm very pleased to report, is Ghanem Rashed walking away from that absolutely monstrous incident. And Ivan Nozov has possibly lived up to his name. We'll find out when we see the car, as this is the fight for third position.
Colapinto's gone down the inside of the... Colapinto's got third place back now, but he's gone very wide on exit, so Al Habsi could be clawing the position back through the next set of corners.
Kylian Maher and Nicholas Beart as well, right with them, as it's Maher who's got the run on Beart down the back straight, and Kylian Maher looks to draw alongside. Can he make it through? He's determined to have a go, and through he passes. So Nicholas Beart demoted to 6th position. And now, of course, something you picked up on earlier, Elliot, is that Johnny Edgar and Giorgio Carrara, they're not necessarily going to be here all season. So the battle between Colapinto and Al Habsi is critical in the championship. Yeah,
and Colapinto did well there to hold the position at the end of the straight, but he's still got Al Habsi on his tail, as has Maher and Beart.
And Maher looks to the inside of Nicholas Beart, as Beart, though he's trying for the track position, they think about interlocking wheels, but through the third sector of the track and on towards the final turn to end the lap. Let's have a look. Is Maher going to challenge? Yes, he is. There was a level of predictability about that. And I think Beart knew it was coming as well, so he just gives the room and looks to fight back another time.
Yeah, Beart may not be able to make the move back there again, because he hit the curbs on the exit of the corner, which would have lost him a little bit of time. Up front, Carrara and Edgar are fairly even, but Al Habsi's still on the tail of Colapinto, which is essentially the battle for the championship as much as it's for third place.
Still early days in the title fight, but they're emerging as the... arguably the class of the field. Now we've got Glenn Van Barlo and Artem Lobanenko looking to ease their way onto the tail of this group. So this is the fight for 5th position at the moment. In terms of the trophy for the female drivers, that's currently being led by Irina Sidorkova, ahead of Belen Garcia and Nerea Marti, as down the Mistral straight. Now what we saw, of course, Elliot, in race 1, was Giorgio Carrara was a master at managing the car for the whole 18 minutes plus the lap.
Yeah, he started very conservatively, but by the end of the race was the fastest man on track by almost a second on some occasions. On every lap so far, he has been very close to Edgar on the straight, but Edgar, who's only in his second race, seems to have pulled time back in the twisty final sector of the lap.
It's a good spot, because Carrara, fastest first sector of anybody in the race thus far. Shahab Al Habsi, fastest second sector of anybody, which really just tells us that he's got a toe. But it is the final sector is essentially 45% of the lap, so it's where the bulk of the time gets made and lost, and Carrara not able to make too much ground. At the same time, the Colapinto and Al Habsi battle seems to have stabilised. Likewise, Nicholas Beart now needs to worry a little bit more about Glenn Van Barlo behind him, possibly. you'd like to think the MP Motorsport nickname him Gary, as he and Van Barlo has then got Artem Loganenko just behind him as they come out of the final turn across the line. And again, Carrara a little bit closer.
Yeah, that's another fastest lap for Carrara, 2-minute 06.923. And the battle for third place is getting ever closer. There's only half a second between Colapinto and Al Habsi now. And it looks like two MP Motorsport drivers in 6th and 7th for the swap positions. That's Nicholas Glenn Van Berlo.
Yeah, Glenn Van Berlo, let's see. He's challenging Bayard. He's thinking about it. Oh, that was going to be a very nice move. If he pulls it off, he does. That's really good stuff from Glenn Van Berlo. And what's really interesting for me, Elliot, in this race is they seem to be struggling to get a little bit of temperature into the tyres because it's that little bit cooler and it's making the cars move around a bit more.
Yeah, you can see them sliding a lot, and as well as potentially causing track limit offences, that also means they're going to ride over the curbs more, which could cause damage to the car. Once again, Carrara is very close to Edgar at the end of the Mistral Straight, but looks like he's going to lose time again, as Al Habsi's looking at the rear of Colapinto's car for third place.
On to the second half of the Mistral Straight they come. And this is the frustration here for Giorgio Carrara, is he's able to be right with Johnny Edgar, 4/10 of a second, but unless he's within 2/10 of a second, he just won't be able to launch a bid to move down out of the Corp de Scene. Oh, and Colapinto again, he lives dangerously through turn 11.
Yeah, he span out there in the first race, which cost him the title lead to his rival. But this time he looks to just be keeping on it. But as the tyres get more warm throughout the race, that might not always be the same.
And this time round, Carrara is able to live with Edgar through the final sector. Now that is interesting as they close up on each other again.
He's very close to the final corner, going on to the 6th lap of the race. And we'll see if he set another fastest lap, as he has for the last 3 laps.
And he has.
He has. 2-minute 06.526, a 10th up on what Edgar set. And he's right on his gearbox going through turn 1. But obviously, Edgar still kept the lead.
And you just wonder with Giorgio Carrara if he's keeping an eye on the clock and he just doesn't want to drive through the turbulent air behind Johnny Edgar until he's absolutely certain that he's going to be able to launch a challenge.
Yeah, he wouldn't want to spend too much time on his gearbox through these corners if he can set up a move later in the race down the Mistral Straight.
So through turn 6, this will bring them out of turn 7 onto the Mistral Straight at that point, as Killian Meyer sets the fastest first sector of anybody. In the background, Colapinto seems to be fending off Shihab Al Habsi reasonably well. And then we have got Glenn Van Berlo, who's now up ahead, of course. Nicholas Bayard, Artem Lobanenko next in the queue.
Shihab Al Habsi is very close to Colapinto again at the Mistral chicane. Now, the second part of the straight will have another opportunity to make an overtake, although it's obviously very difficult through the turn 10-11 complex. It gets tighter on the second apex.
It seems to be a level of maturity as well from Al Habsi, in that he's had a couple of opportunities where it would have been tempting to have a lunge and he's not gone for it.
Yeah, he's probably weighing up the points he could score for a 4th place against 3rd place to potentially 0 if the two clash. Colapinto is very loose at the front again through that corner.
Wonder if he's made a gamble on setup, flashing out the front wing a tiny, or do something with the balance of the front of the car to give him just a little bit of slickness on the straights. But it's so evenly matched once more.
Going through into the final corner for the front two, look closer than ever. So there's maybe another fastest lap for Giorgio Carrara. Genza Motorsport teammate Johnny Edgar. And it was Edgar who set fastest lap, a 2-minute 06.474. So he's got half a second advantage on Carrara now. Colapinto's even beaten that lap, a 2-minute 6.304. So even though he looked loose at the end of the second sector, he's obviously picked up a lot of pace in that final set of corners.
He has, and it just makes you wonder how, whether or not his preference is just to have a car that's a little bit looser and moves around underneath him as Al Habsi takes a big bite of curb into turn 4 and 5. as they're all, with the exception, of course, of Gunham Rashed, still running. We're on lap 7 of the race, the clock ticking down pretty rapidly. And down the Mistral straight once more. And this is very impressive from Johnny Edgar, because he has just responded perfectly to Giorgio Carrara beginning to fill his mirrors.
Yeah, by setting the fastest lap since beaten. It's almost like he's learned from his teammates since first race, because Carrara showed how it could be done, biding your time and then making sure you're quick enough at the end of the race. And considering Edgar's at the very beginning of his car racing career, only his second race, I imagine he'd taken that advice and watched the onboards.
Seen what to do, and by contrast, Colapinto was having a little bit of a weave around, just trying to break the toe to Shahab Al-Habsi. And Colapinto, we're talking about the tiniest switch in the car here as he turns in, but the car, when you're so used to seeing these things glued to the road, it just makes you that bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, the turn 10, turn 11 complex are probably the two fastest corners on the circuit as well. So Colapinto is likely carrying a lot of speed into those two corners, and if the brake bias isn't just as he wants it, it's very likely that one end of the car is going to get loose.
But at the moment, he is still doing what he needs to do to retain that 6th place, or 3rd place rather, at the end of lap 6, as Shahab Al-Habsi looks close up on him, and actually Al-Habsi's not got a bad run here towards turn 1.
Yeah, and it looks like Carrara's also got close to Edgar. Oh, and Colapinto and Al-Habsi are side by side. Unfortunately, it's outside of our pitch right now. As they come out turn 1, Colapinto's still got 3rd place. Al-Habsi's right on his rear, and he may go and look for a move at turn 5.
See if he can get the slingshot, then darts one side, then the other. And now you see that was unflappability from Franco Colapinto, because Al-Habsi was doing all the movement. Colapinto just stuck to the line.
Yeah, and you've got to wonder, though, that Colapinto was weaving on the previous lap if he's got struggling with his tyres, or he's very aware that Al-Habsi's got the faster car right now.
And also, there's just the nature of if you start to look in your mirrors a little bit too much, as now Al-Habsi, it's hard to say from this angle if he's got a good run into the chicane or not.
Yeah, our front two are right on the rear of each other, but they're evenly matched on pace. Whereas Al-Habsi's looking at a move at the first chicane, Minstrel Straight, but he's thought better of it, which means he's closer to line up a second move on for going to turn 10, turn 11. And there's only 4 tenths between our top two, very close, but as we're aware, unless there's probably around 2 tenths gap. Oh, and Colapinto and Al-Habsi are side by side going for turn 10. Al-Habsi's gone for the outside of turn 10, and he's completed the move, going through turn 11, second apex. Will he complete it? Oh, and Colapinto's taken way too much curb on the inside, but he's forced Al-Habsi wide.
That was really great, wasn't it? And very, very brave move from Al-Habsi.
And there's been lock-up from Carrara in second place, it appears. So when the picture goes back to final corner, we see the order of the front two.
I think Carrara's still there, but that was very brave from both of them. But now, as you say, Carrara is in a position to possibly think about lining up a move on Johnny Edgar. They're about to start the penultimate lap of the race.
Yeah, we're going to the final 2 laps, so the pressure's on now. We're going to see the gap as they cross the line. 0.35, so it's the closest it's been in a long time. And Carrara's 2 tenths faster than Edgar on that lap. And it looks like Killian Meyer set the fastest lap in 5th place. We're going through turn 1. Carrara's still on Edgar's rear, but he just can't force a move right now.
It's interesting, isn't it, how he spent all race following Edgar, but he's just not been able to make anything happen. As meanwhile, here is Belen Garcia and Irina Sidakova. This is for the female driver trophy, and at the moment it is the Russian who is just ahead of Garcia, but Garcia gets a great run out of the final turn.
And Johnny Edgar's just set the fastest first sector of the race since beaten by Meyer, but he's going quicker than Carrara just when it matters.
Meanwhile, Sidakova and Belen Garcia having a drag race towards the first corner. Who will it be? It is Sidakova who retains the place. And yes, good spot on Meyer. Look at him, he's right there in the fight for 3rd.
Yeah, he's right on the rear of Al-Habsi, which means he probably can't force a move on Colapinto now, because he'll be looking in his own mirrors. They've just gone through the chicane, splitting the Minstrel straight. So we're going to see them come back into picture now, three all lined up. And our top 2 are still very close. Looks like Carrara was 1/10 faster in the second sector, but he was 2/10 slower in the first, so Edgar's still extending his lead the tiniest bit.
Now, here is the heart-in-mouth moment every lap for Colapinto. That time round, he actually didn't go all Colin McRae. Wasn't the change for the lead on the exit turn 11. We didn't see how it started. Carrara snatches a break, though, but he's through.
Yeah, he did that last time round as well. He locked the fronts there, and it appears that Colapinto's taking a lot less speed through turn 11 now, which has allowed the cars behind him to close in, but also means he's got a more stable car for the next few corners.
So I wonder what happened there to our erstwhile race leader. As Edgar slips to second place. They're about to start the last lap of the race. Whether that was Carrara just seeing a gap and going for it. Either way, he's in the lead.
Yeah, and he has a 0.439 second lead now, which probably won't be enough to hold to the end of the lap. But it looks like the battle for third's getting exciting. We've got Colapinto, Al Habsi and Meyer behind. Al Habsi's looking to the outside of turn 1, taking a bit of curb there, but Colapinto's still got the position. Going through turn 2, Al Habsi's being very careful. He's going to bide his time. The run down to turn 3, which is quite a tight right-hander.
It's interesting, isn't it? Al Habsi, you wonder if he entirely trusts that the door might not won't get shut on him if he goes for a move, and so he is determined to wait until it's an absolute certainty that he's going to get through. As Killian Meyer watching behind. Now, another driver who's really come on since last race is Killian Meyer. How much he faded in race 1 compared to what he's done in race 2. Meanwhile, back to the Sidakova and Garcia battle.
Yeah, and they're going side by side in turn 1. The SMP Racing back Sidakova's got the inside line, has kept the position, but it's going to be very tight because there's a compromised exit there. Oh, and is Ben Garcia going around the outside?
She's trying to. She's got a good run, but Sidakova has got the track position.
Using as much track as possible, and they're very close on the exit. We're back to Minstrel Straight. Giorgio Carrara's just taken through turn 10, so he's got the final set of corners now, and it looks like he's pulled quite a big gap to Edgar in that last lap. But the battle for third's still very close. It looks like Killian Meyer's going to go down the inside. He thought better of it. Colapinto's got a small gap to Al Habsi now.
But there are still a couple of opportunities left on this lap, and Al Habsi backed everything on getting out of turn 11. Oh, there's contact, around they go.
The two title rivals are hit one another. Colapinto's off track on the abrasive runoff. He's lost several positions. Al Habsi hasn't lost any, but I imagine that could be a penalty post-race. And Carrara is going through the final corner, taking his first win in Spanish F4. It's Genza Motorsport's second race, so 2 wins out of 2 for the team. And Johnny Edgar, another podium in just his first weekend of racing.
So it's the victory for Giorgio Carrara, Johnny Edgar in second, and Shihab Al Habsi is going to take third, just on the line from Killian Meyer, with Glenn Van Berlo in fourth and Nicholas Bayat in sixth. Franco Colapinto across the line in seventh, and probably not euphoric about all of that. The incident to be investigated after the race. Across the line there comes Axel Nos in car 7, and then Ivan Nozov had his adventures earlier on. Now, who has won the battle between Irina Sidakova and Belen Garcia? Because the pair of them were absolutely going at it. Here we are.
They're still battling. It's only for the final corner now, and Sidakova's still got the lead, although they're very close on the gearbox. Sidakova will cross the line and take female trophy victory. Ada Garcia and Nerea Marti is further 8 seconds back. He'll cross the line as the 16th finisher of this race.
I think they rather enjoyed that, didn't they? That was very, very close. So Giorgio Carrara having an excellent weekend so far. And in terms of the overall championship standings, that is going to be pretty tight, one would suggest. But it is Carrara from Edgar once more, with this time around it's Shihab Al Habsi who shall complete the podium. So Genza Motorsport.
On my calculations, Colapinto and Shihab Al Habsi are now matched evenly at the top of the standings.
Excellent. That sets us up very well for the third and final race of the weekend, which will be tomorrow afternoon, and that is the slightly longer race. They've got a qualifying session to set the grid for that tomorrow morning. So the Spanish Formula 4 Championship giving us a great level of entertainment once more, and we'll just have a check of the final results.
Giorgio Carrara taking Genza's second win on their second start in 21 minutes 16.311. We have Johnny Edgar, Red Bull Jr. in his second start, finishing second. Shahab Al-Habsi, who is racing under a Chinese license, it appears here, in third place. Just a small margin ahead of Kylian Meyer, although the incident between Al-Habsi and Colapinto on the final lap means these positions may change. We have Glenn Van Berlo, the lead MP Motorsport driver in fifth, ahead of teammate Nicholas Bayart. Colapinto, who must be ruining that last lap clash with Al-Habsi. Artem Lobanenko in eighth, Rafael Villanueva in ninth. And the female trophy battle was 14th Irina Tedeskova, 15th Belen Garcia, and 16th Nerea Marti. And we had two retirees from this race, Tishman van der Helm and Ghanem Rashed, and thankfully we saw Rashed got out of the car and he was looking fine.
Yeah, very pleased to see Ghanem Rashed okay after a fairly monstrous incident, none of which is of any concern for Giorgio Carrera. He's having a very good afternoon's work here in Paul Ricard. So he celebrates once more, goes to congratulate teammate Johnny Edgar. And Edgar steps out. 2 podiums from 2 races. Shahab Al-Habsi, I expect, knows that he has got another hour or so in race control, possibly ahead of him. We haven't seen a replay of the move, so it's hard to judge. But what he did do, though, was set up through turn 11 to get that accelerated run up towards the technical section. He was setting up for the move, and as is so often the case with young drivers finding their way, they just didn't quite leave each other enough space.
Yeah, and for Giorgio Carrara, it was basically played the same strategy he did the first race. Bided his time, made sure he had the tyres ready for the final few laps, and then placed an important move. Now, the Genza team, which finished 1-2 here, is only expected to do this round. And having won 2 races, I expect they'd be interested in coming back now. Well,
yes, you do wonder whether or not there's the chance to push on and gain a bit of ground in the championship. And the way the calendar is structured this year is, as we'll have a look back at the race then, with off the line, it was Johnny Edgar who led away from pole position ahead of Giorgio Carrara as they headed towards turns 1 and 2. Snatched the break there from Johnny Edgar, but he kept Carrara behind him. Then, as they headed towards turns 3 and 4, Ghanem Rashed launched over the tail of Tishman van der Helm. Unfortunately, Rashed okay. Car, though, rather less so. Meanwhile, Kylian Meyer was busy carving his way up through the field. First of all, dispensing with Nicholas Bayart. As Edgar led, it was Carrara who chased him a while. As Glenn Van Berlo executed a superb move around Nicholas Bayart. And that was good enough to give Van Berlo 5th position. This was the move then that saw Giorgio Carrara take the lead from Johnny Edgar with just a couple of laps remaining, and despite Edgar's best efforts, he was unable to reclaim the advantage from Carrara. The battle between Irina Sidorkova and Belen Garcia for the female driver's trophy eventually decided in Sidorkova's favour, but certainly not one to try from Garcia. Here's another look at the move that decided 3rd place. Shahab Al-Habsi to the inside of Franco Colapinto, a gap that was always closing, but none of it was of any concern for Giorgio Carrara, taking victory in the second race of the weekend in Spanish Formula 4 at Paul Ricard. 2nd place to Johnny Edgar, with Shahab Al-Habsi completing the podium, finishing a fraction of a second ahead of Kylian Meyer. So much to celebrate for the Genza Motorsport team. So thank you very much for joining us today for our coverage of the Formula 4 Spanish Championship here in Paul Ricard. We'll be back tomorrow with the final race of the weekend.